Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me for a lovely talk here. So I'm going to talk about the exciting project we are having known as Project Veraison. So setting the scene, why do we need this? What it is all about? So many times in the industry, you have scenarios where a relying party or a user wants to ascertain a machine's identity, or whether the environment on which the machine is running or the firmware or software the machine is running is trustworthy or not. And that's where we go to the world of, and what are the use cases where we need it? When, let's say the device is connected to the relying party or to the network, the relying party wants to know whether the device is running trustworthy environment or not, or whether it is in the right state before I can talk to that. Let's like a banking system wants to communicate to the user, or the user wants to communicate to the banking system, or similarly releasing valuable resources like a ML model needs to be deployed for inferencing or for training, then whether the environment is in the right state before I can deploy the model. So there are multiple use cases like that. So that's why we call attestation, just to inform that this is not the salsa attestation, but this is remote attestation. But I don't use the word remote because it can be used in local environment as well. So it's just called attestation. It's just to prove that the environment is trustworthy, whether it's trusted execution environment or some other type of environment. For that, to prove that, the entity produces a signed evidence, which is known as attestation report. But attestation report production is simply not sufficient because one has to verify the report, and that's where the verification has a huge role and a huge importance in the industry. And that's where attestation verification comes into picture. But there are certain challenges when building such an attestation verification service, because based on different deployment, different use cases, different type of hardware, different type of technologies, you have multiple types of attestation verification services, which means harmonizing this industry is a challenge. So because you need different type of business relationships, and verifier then becomes customs to individual use cases or individual type of hardware. That's why we went with a solution which is building common components or set of tools or libraries which one can quickly assemble to build an attestation verification service catering to their deployment. So that's why we started the project, open source project called Veraison, and I'm going to talk a bit about it. It's Veraison stands for Verification of Attestation. It's fully open source and open governance, and it has the tools and libraries you can quickly take on to build an attestation verification service. And it's a community participation from multiple organizations, and we have reference Docker deployment, and cloud work is ongoing to deploy instance in cloud. So that's how typically you would see in one of the particular deployment where the manufacturer deploys a device in the field, and when a relying party or an application in the cloud wants to bring the device on board, it would ask the verifier service to check the trustworthiness of the deployment or test the trustworthiness of the device before admitting the device into its cloud. So just going through this few of the design highlights. It's a very flexible deployment model where you could deploy the service in public, private, multi-cloud, single or multi-tenant, and potentially to deploy locally as well in a trust zone kind of environment. We fully embracing the standards in IETF, so it fully follows the RFC 9334 as well as TCG DICE endorsement. It's a fully policy-driven and extensible via plugin. That's why if you have your technology, you can bring in here. So this is what is typically a verification flow looks like. You have a provisioning pipeline and a verification pipeline, and the boxes on the top are different type of attestation technologies, which on the left are the ones we support, and on the right is the work in progress. So if you have another technology which needs remote attestation, feel free to reach out to us, and we would be happy to discuss and bring it on board. So why am I here? What brings me here in terms of connecting with transparency, which is a talk of the subject in this forum. So remote attestation can augment the value of transparency by doing attestation of the root of trust on which the transparency systems run, especially like you run a transparency log on a hardware platform or in an environment. So you can attest the transparency, attest the application, or attest the full transparency log. And in addition to that, you can attest, like we saw USB Armory stuff being explained yesterday. Witness running in a TEE, one would like to know the witness is running in the right environment, so you can attest the trusted execution environment as well. And then I will just make another interesting scenario where you can, transparency can augment remote attestation, like an endpoint attester is, and there's a relying party and an attestation verifier like Veraison. So the attestation evidence is usually terse, so you can reduce only limited information from this evidence to run the attestation verification. But at this time, at the time of verification, a transparency log can be queried to get much more richer information about the data. Like you can get information about SBOMs or what this endpoint has gotten, what level of certification and stuff like that. And the richer data set can be given to the relying party so that it can make a decision whether to accept or to deny the endpoint in their network. So yeah, we would be very interested in taking feedback from you. And if you have any remote attestation use case, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be very happy to discuss about what is your use case, what you want to do, whether it is ML protection or AI security linking to platform security. So feel free to reach out to us. That's all I have. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me offline, or I'm happy to answer now as I have some time left, 30 seconds left. So.